If you want to watch a real video of substance, go to Documentary Hypothesis versus Jesus, or any ones before that. This is only dealing with Ecumenism and the decisions of the Balamard Unitism and Vatican II, post-Vatican II relations with Catholics and Orthodox. If you don't want to hear about that, if you want to hear something more interesting, go to Jesus, or I don't know what it's called, Documentary Hypothesis versus Jesus, False Dichotomy. That one's going to be better than this one, so just skip over this. For all you who care about unitism and the ecumenical dialogue, something blasphemous happened, and I think it should be seen as blasphemous, and I think the Patriarch Constantinople is to blame for the schisms of recent crazy Taliban-like Orthodox group. He did something that had no power and effectively did not change the churches at all. Check this out. Now, people said they were shocked by the joint unofficial the Balamand statement, Balamand, Lebanon, and I just typed in unofficial joint theological discussion between Catholics and the Orthodox Church. The background for this, for these things, which for the Balamand, these were the two outcomes they came with. With regard to the method, which has been called unitism. Oh, unitism. We're not uniats. There is no no. That's a slam that we use for Byzantine Catholics. It is stated at Frenesing that we reject it as a method for the search for unity because it is opposed to the common tradition of our churches. Yes. Concerning the Oriental Catholic churches, it is clear that they, as a part of the Catholic communion, have the right to exist and to act to answer the spiritual needs of their faithful. Absolutely, we have no comment on them. They should address the faithful of their church, but they're not us. These two things are correct. But what kicked it off, why people are so opposed to it apparently, is this is what happened. For Catholics, the convocation of the Second Vatican Council, at which the Orthodox observers were present and marked a new beginning, a positive evaluation of the Eastern tradition found in the council documents, especially Unitas I don't speak Latin, Redigitera Grado. Most importantly, it clearly states that the Orthodox are churches in the full sense of the word, and that they have valid sacraments, even though we don't have sacraments, but that's how the Catholic Church views us. This laid the foundation for the development of an ecclesiology of communion, and the notion of Catholics and Orthodox are sister churches. We may be sister churches in the sense that we can look to Rome as a sister that had gone wayward into whoring and prostituting. I'm not slamming any Roman Catholics saying that. I would never say that to a Roman Catholic, and if you're a Roman Catholic listening to this, I don't mean that in that way. I just mean it as we don't accept some of the things you do. We see as heretical. So that's the last time I'm ever going to say that. So apologies if that's taken the wrong way. Forgive me profusely, because I don't want to have the same hostility towards you as or sound even like the Protestants, because I know how hurtful that is and does not achieve anything but hatred. But yes, Rome is a valid see, whether we care whether we don't like the patriarch that sits there, the bishop that sits there. Rome still is a see. It's maybe out and wayward, but it's a see. We recognize it as a see. We always have. We just see it as vacant, basically, or gone into heresy for the time. But before 1054, absolutely, it's a see. This coincided with development of what became known as a dialogue of charity. Now, this is where it gets scary. A process of learning to trust one another again. Okay, kind of. Necessary precursor to the fruitful theological dialogue in January 1964. listen to what happened. Pope Paul VI, and Patriarch Athenagoras I of Constantinople met for the first time in Jerusalem on December 7th, 1965, in Rome and in Istanbul, Constantinople. And they simultaneously proclaimed the lifting of the mutual excommunications of 1054, declaring them erased from the memory of the Church. These steps were a prelude to the establishment of the Theological Commission of Pope John Paul II and Patriarch Dimitrios of Constantinople in 1971. Now let me tell you something. Maybe the Pope in his diocese can lift the excommunication, but this never happened. Erased from the memory? Well, then why can't the Roman Catholics, according to us, take communion in our churches? If they're erased, then we should be able to take communion in Roman Catholic churches, and Roman Catholics take communion in our churches. Now, the Pope says, and I knew this before I came to the Orthodox churches, because I've heard this on EWTN, that the Catholics can come to Orthodox churches and take communion. But for us, we say, no, you can't. That is actually dangerous. Now, in times of war, when you're totally cut off, is it permissible to go to to take the Eucharist in a different church, particularly Catholic or Oriental? Yes. Under extreme dire circumstances. This is usually in the East, where the communion is pretty much practiced identical. Because there's still some validity there, and particularly Roman Catholic, because Rome has never been, never been an Eastern contest for the see. There's never been. We're not, it's not where there's two people in the same city like Alexandria or Antioch, or at one point Constantinople. But the Patriarchate of Constantinople cannot, I repeat, cannot lift or erase from the memory of the Church. I mean, that's like erased from the memory of mankind. Could put the ring down, the papal stamp. That is BS. Because there's who can call a council? For you out there, who can call a council? Because bearing an ecumenical council, a legitimate one, a non-robber council, which it would be certainly called a robber council if they were just dismiss the excommunication of 1054. What do we do with Photius then? Is Photius now a heretic? I mean, the concerns and the beliefs of the East 154 years before that communication of 1054 were said by Photius, and this was the feeling of the Church of the East, of all the churches of the East, of all the, the one church of the East, of all the sees of the East. And much bloodshed came about from it when the Catholics tried to invade multiple times. This, to me, is just the Patriarch. It's the Patriarch of Constantinople, which continually, and with no shame and no self-respect, sucks up to Rome. At least the Roman Catholics can respect Rome, but I don't see how even the Greek Orthodox can respect the Patriarch of Constantinople, the sleazing and whoring out it does to Rome. Because Rome's not changing its view. Rome believes it's the head of the Church. It truly believes that. Does the Orthodox Church believe that current Roman Catholicism is the head of the Church? The current Pope is? No. But it seems that the Patriarchs of Constantinople have to constantly whore and sleaze themselves out, which I think is disgusting. Leave that up to the Oriental Orthodox, I find this disgusting. It's not disgusting for what the Pope did, but it's disgusting for what the Patriarch of Constantinople should have known better. But the Greeks are some of the first to go headlong into hell. I mean, they're the ones that are always beating out the Armenians in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, always starting the fights. Just a short side story. the bishops of the Greek Church and the Armenian Church went into the sepulchre to light the bundle of sticks at the fire, the holy fire that comes down, the miraculous holy fire. As exiting the tomb, the bishop blew out the Armenian bishops. The Greek Orthodox bishop blew out the Armenian bishop's fire, and he had to relight it off the Greek's fire. And it happened to the Greek bishop. He fell, boom, and the Armenian had to go back and relight his from the fire. What happened to the Greek bishop? Before he could light anybody else's candle on Pascha, he boom, got ashes everywhere, fell on his face, and the fire went out, was scattered all over the floor and went out. So pride truly does goeth before the fall. So we can call an ecumenical council. The emperor, unless Putin wants to call himself the emperor and call a council, there can't be and plus, is Alexandria and Antioch and Jerusalem under the empire? You would have to have somebody like Putin declare himself to be the emperor, then have a child who was born in as the emperor, which then couldn't cede the empire, take over Constantinople, Alexandria, and Jerusalem, and then have another son who's reigning from that, and has Constantinople. Oh, they'd have to take over Constantinople too. Have to have a son born into an empire that already has those sees, and then call the call an ecumenical council. Not to mention they'd have to have Rome. Rome would have to come back to, well, I guess maybe the 9 patriarchs could, but also I think you would have to have a patriarch of Rome at least, which there's no organic outflow. We're not going to replace that one. So from various angles, you could not have an ecumenical council today. Certainly that 1054 is not erased from our memory. It will never be. And the fact that Photius is a saint and we celebrate his saint's day, it will always be remembered. The anathemas are still in place. There's no joint communion. As long as there are uniates, there is no joint communion. This is the main thing. The Orthodox of Antioch don't accept the seal, the chrism of the Catholics. It's been accepted at some points in modern times, but no. This Athenagoras, the first of Constantinople, is trying really hard, or has tried really hard, to get himself declared as a heretic and to be spat upon. Let his images be marred, and any possible icons that have been made of him thrown down and defaced. This is how I feel. And if I am cut off from the church and sent to hell for that, good, then I can teach those in hell how to pray, although I don't think that I ever will, and I should never fear a heretic, even though he sits in the apostles' chair, is of the apostles' seat. It's like putting swine, a pig, in vestments covered in stinking shit and calling him a bishop. He's not a bishop. Again, if the bishops are, if the man standing on the shoulders of the bishop, his head is just above lava, then the bishop must be standing on the shoulders of the patriarch. So, and if the floor of hell is paved with the skulls of bishops, the patriarchs are probably, their skulls probably make up the toilets and the urinals. And the floor of the pig pens in hell are done by the skulls of the patriarchs. This is disgusting beyond all horror, and the blame for the people being so revolted that they have to leave the church, at least in some part. I could blame those who are the Rokor that have not reunited with the church. I can still say they're crazy. But as for the Greeks that have left the Greek church, I would put that fault at Athenagoras' feet. There is no union, and even in action, the modern-day Greek Church, even after this man has recognized 1054 because of no joint communion, and we don't, I mean, how could he call himself ecumenical patriarch if there is no, if 1054 is to be erased from the memory of mankind and the memory of the Church, then he has to listen to Rome, because Rome is then first among equals. I think it's fantastic that Moscow says we're the new Rome. Screw Constantinople. They're no ecumenical patriarchate. They're not the head of the Church, even in honor. And I would say they're the head of the Constantinople's head of the Church in dishonor, and in heresy, and in vulgarity. The head of our Church is us. We are the strength and the backbone of the Orthodox Church. Look at the horror at which this patriarchate has said, Athenagoras has said this evil thing, this horrible thing, this lie. How do the Orthodox people act? The same. Ignore. Just like all the robber councils, just like the Council of Carthage and all these robber councils, and even when the bishops tried to unite after in Florence, Mark of Ephesus said no, and they came back and they either had to repent or they were hanged or disemboweled. So no, this doesn't matter. This is anathema. He doesn't need to be anathemized. He's already anathemized himself. May his memory be erased from mankind and the memory of the Church. Or no, let his memory sustain, but as a heretic and a warning against any possible future heretics. That's why we have to remember Arius, why we must say the anathemas, why Nestorius will always be an anathema, why people like Marcion and Paul of Samosata or Samosata will be always spat upon and hated. These are profoundly evil men, and I would have to think that Athenagoras was only doing that so he could achieve some fame or get some power, some money from Rome, which he has now achieved the opposite. So if anybody wants to make videos bashing Athenagoras, send me the video after you make it. I'll vote it thumbs up. I'll keep commenting on it every month so you keep getting all my viewers and any possible future viewers to look at your videos, because scumbag. I mean, his exact words. Where is it? Declaring them erased from the memory of the Church. He has no power to do so. An ecumenical council could declare them inactive as of now, but it would never erase the past. That's being a scoundrel. That's lying. That's why I don't take down videos that I even disagree with that I've made in the past. I don't even have the words to describe how scumbaggish that is. Peace to you. May God save Serbia and Syria, and let me fight against Ecumenism. And so long as the Byzantine Catholic Church exists and Uniatism exists, the Orthodox Church stands firm, and there is no common communion between us and the Catholics. In dire times, it's necessary for it's allowed, it's permissible for a single individual to receive it in certain rites, but absolutely not as a blanket thing. I mean, even I would be careful to do that. I mean, I'd have to not taking communion for a while and be trapped in a dire circumstance where death was almost imminent, where I would do something such as that. So no, absolutely not. May Athenagoras be remembered as a heretic. The Balamand, these were the two outcomes they came with. With regard to the method which has been called unitism. Oh, uniatism. We're not uniates. There is no no. That's a slam that we use for Byzantine Catholics. It is stated at Frenesing that we reject it as a method for the search for unity because it is opposed to the common tradition of our churches. Yes. Concerning the Oriental Catholic churches, it is clear that they, as a part of the Catholic communion, have the right to exist and to act to answer of the spiritual needs of their faithful. Absolutely, we have no comment on them. They should address the faithful of their church, but they're not us. These two things are correct. But what kicked it off, why people are so opposed to it apparently, is this is what happened. For Catholics, the convocation of the Second Vatican Council, at which the Orthodox observers were present, and marked a new beginning, a positive evaluation of the Eastern tradition found. If you want to watch a real video of substance, go to Documentary Hypothesis versus Jesus, or anyone's before that. This is only dealing with Ecumenism and the decisions of the Balamard Unitism and Vatican II, post-Vatican II relations with Catholics and Orthodox. If you don't want to hear about that, if you want to hear something more interesting, go to Jesus, or I don't know what it's called, Documentary Hypothesis versus Jesus, False Dichotomy. That one's going to be better than this one, so just skip over this. For all you who care about unitism and the ecumenical dialogue, something blasphemous happened, and I think it should be seen as blasphemous, and I think the Patriarch of Constantinople is to blame for the schisms of recent crazy Taliban-like Orthodox group. He did something that had no power and effectively did not change the churches at all. Check this out. Now, people said they were shocked by the joint unofficial the Balamand statement, Balamand Lebanon, and I just typed in unofficial joint theological discussion between Catholics and the Orthodox Church. The background for these things, which